I love technology and I love creativity. And I love when you bring the two things together, because when you bring them together, you can do pretty incredible things. And I want to show you some things that we've done that I'm quite proud of. But I just think that, you know, you mash these two forces up and you can do things that can help transform society. You can do these things that can help make the world a better place. So I just want to talk to you a bit about this whole notion. I've got this whole thing, doing good with code, and doing these things by using our creative powers to be able to make the world a better place. So I want to talk to you about three things that we did recently in the last year where we used technology to inspire the next generation of explorers and help educate people on this fantastic thing, you know, the web. And then also create an environment and create a platform that allowed the next generation of inventors and pioneers to go on and invent all these crazy things that will go on having a massive effect on the world as we know it. But I want to talk a tiny bit about Creative Lab because I spent a lot of time in digital agencies, advertising agencies, and design agencies. I spent about 20 years, and I think, you know, I was always kind of that digital bloke, the token kind of digital bloke in the early days who sat in the corner and tried to tell people about this crazy thing, this interweb. And then I get to Google, and I'm like the least digital guy, you know, because it's Google. And then I learned, I learned like the difference between sort of being and thinking digital and then allowing technology to really help drive your thinking and using it as a tool, and I talk a lot about using it as a toy to really help take your thoughts to a very different place. So Creative Lab is a small group of people within Google, and we're kind of a mix, and we're in 4 cities around the world, and our whole thing is to use our products and our platforms, our own ones, to help inspire people like you to the possibilities and open your mind to the possibilities of all these different things that you could do. And this little tiny thing of kind of inventing the future, which, you know, easier said than done. And what do we believe in? We believe in, again, having a real understanding of people and what drives them and what motivates them and all the hardships that they endure in this kind of like really difficult place to navigate called, you know, the world. And when you really get under the skin of these people and understand them, you try to do these things where you take the magic of our products and you combine them and you connect them, and it's pretty spectacular. And I remember well before I started at Google years ago, I remember I was in Vancouver in my hometown, and I remember I installed Google Earth, and I typed in my, you know, the house I was actually in. And I remember, you know, I saw the globe from space, and it started rotating in slow motion, and then it zoomed into my neighborhood, and I saw my house, and that was magic. That was like hair on the back of the neck magic. So you take that magic, and you connect it with your understanding of people and how you can help them, how you can entertain them, how you can do all these useful things for them, and you've got something good going all of a sudden. So that's our whole sort of raison d'etre is to focus on the user. Everything we do is for the user. And I think when you think like that, you know, things tend to kind of take care of themselves, you know, because they're the ones who will determine where you're going to go and what direction you're going to end up in. So that whole thing about focusing on the user. So who are we? So another thing I think, again, in my previous life, we talked about the creatives in the creative department, and then you get to Google and these guys who are writing the things like Google Earth. Is that person maybe not even more creative than the creative guy who just joined from the other side? So everybody's creative at a place like Google. So what we tend to do is we bring in people with real specialty skills, filmmakers, designers, coders, all that sort of stuff, and we all sit together and we all just work together and we do interesting things together, and there is no sort of linear process. There is no assembly line. There are a bunch of people, a bunch of thinkers, and we come together and we crack these sort of problems, and then we make stuff. We've got a real maker culture. And this is how we work, believe it or not, at Google even. We sit down and we come up with an idea in a line. We write it down on a piece of paper, we stick it on the wall, and then you walk by. And in that split second you walk by, if you don't get it, it's too complicated, and we take it back down again. And then we rapidly prototype. We don't do a ton of research. We do some thinking up front, and we do some testing up front, but for the most part, you know, we make things. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, because you have a company that's being led by engineers. So there's a bunch of people like us who are looking at these guys who are launching these products, and they're launching them early, and they're iterating them, and they're launching beta, and they're doing all these really interesting things, and then we're applying it to our creative, and all of a sudden it's creating a very different sort of platform. So we quickly, rapidly prototype, we code stuff, we shoot our own little films, and we get to a place very, very quickly, and then we get it out there, and we let people be part of the conversation. But again, 99.9% of the time, my guys are making. They're not meeting, they're not going to, all these other things, they're just making stuff, which is really, really important. And why are we doing this? So I think, again, our whole remit in the Creative Lab is to remind the world what they love about Google. All that sort of stuff, the doodles that you see on a certain day that celebrate something and you interact with it, all that sort of stuff, the stuff that you just love about the brand. So what does this all mean, and what do I do day to day? What's this sort of stuff? So the first thing I want to talk about was this whole notion of thinking big but starting small, because I think, again, we try not to think in terms of campaigns, we think in terms of platforms. So we come up with these ideas, and we're always conscious of how we make them bigger, and much bigger, and scale them, whether it's globally, or in terms of ambition, or whatever. And this first one was very much based on one of the guys back at the ranch who had this idea of kind of engaging young people and trying to inspire the next generation of explorers through sort of the notion of science and the promise of space. And the idea was very simple. It was this thing called YouTube Space Lab, and it was your idea 250 miles above the Earth for the whole world to see. And what we asked was kids from, youth from around the world to effectively come up with science experiments in their classrooms that they would want to put forward in a global competition that would be voted on by the global community. And the best ones we would put in a rocket, and we'd send them to the International Space Station in space, and they would be live streamed back to Earth. I mean, that's pretty cool. But again, you start with this little idea, and then you try to think about how you layer it up and scale it. And we did it with NASA, and we got Stephen Hawking involved, and it was pretty incredible. And this was the launch film.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
So what's interesting is you do these things, and sometimes, as a self-conscious creative person, you're always thinking, does anybody care? Is this just something that I want to do? I kind of like space and that sort of stuff. And then you go to the channel, and you see, and if you see it to date, and this is about a year old, this program, 50 million people, like almost every single person in this country, 50 million people visited that site. And this is a summation of the campaign.
YouTube Space Lab is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to have your experiment performed by astronauts like me in the space station.
Hello, my name is Amr.
And I'm talking to you from Spain.
India.
From Jamaica.
And I'm 16 years old.
Please vote for me.
Getting to meet everybody else from around the world, all coming together in the pursuit of science, and it doesn't matter what language we speak or where we're from, we just all came together because we all like space. That's just really mind-blowing. It's great.
I'd like to just tell you which two science experiments will be there. They're the ones from Dorothy and Sarah, and the ones from
Meeting the kids today was totally inspirational. Their faces are going to flash in my mind as soon as I open the experiment, so it's awesome.
What we wanted to find out was, because the salmonella becomes more bad in space, more virulent, we thought, if that could happen, why not make the good bacteria more good?
My experiment is designed to investigate the effect of microgravity on the way the jumping spider catches its prey.
I'm very grateful to be here in Star City and try all the cosmonaut activities. It definitely has changed me.
The winning experiments are scheduled to be launched from Tanegashima in southern Japan.
This is the
closest that we're ever going to be able to go and see a rocket launch. And I've always wanted to see one ever since I was a little kid. Dreams really do come true.
I've always been fascinated by science because with a handful of equations I can explain the world around me.
Our experiment is actually going into space, and we were just brainstorming it in a little classroom in Troy, Michigan, and now it's actually going on the ISS.
Hello there, and welcome to YouTube Space Lab Live. I'm Bill Nye, the Science Guy, broadcasting live from right here on Earth in the Google Creator Space in London.
YouTube Space Lab, this is Houston.
Do you hear us?
Loud and here on the International Space Station.
That's
How you doing? I have them here in space. This is a gap. This is Dorothy and Sarah's. Thanks to everybody who participated. You guys all made the contest awesome. We're just honored to have been part of it, so thank you.
Humanity's future relies on moving beyond Earth. Realizing this goal will require an entrepreneurial spirit and a new generation of scientists and astronauts.
You use a video platform in a very different way, and you give it a different purpose, and all of a sudden, all these people around the world are like setting this stuff up, and as you saw, it's being live streamed. I mean, sometimes I still think, I can't believe that we pulled that off. The next one is what I talked about earlier, this whole notion of launching early and iterating, and we've got a really interesting exhibition on right now at the Science Museum called Web Lab, and if you guys get a chance, you should check it out. And it's all about these Chrome experiments, 5 different experiments that explore different themes around the web and different technologies, and they're all accessible through a browser. But the whole idea behind it was to get this thing out there and get it out there sooner than later and launch a physical exhibition in beta. How do you launch that? That's like for software. And we said, no, all these like engineers and all that, they launch this stuff early. And they get it out there, and they get people to talk about it and to feedback on it, and they make them part of the process. And again, they don't give them the finished article and say, this is it, deal with it. They say, come along and help me out with this. And I bet you if I involve you, you'll be a bit more forgiving if it's a bit buggy and all that sort of stuff. So this whole notion of launching early and iterating. And so what we did is a series of 5 different experiments, and the whole purpose of it, as I said, was A, to talk to people about all these interesting things that you could do online that we sometimes take for granted. And I think, again, it's not that we don't appreciate the web and all these things that it allows us to do, but for the most part, I think it's kind of trapped behind the screens of all these different devices, our tablets, our phones, our computers. And I think what we wanted to do was give a bit of physicality and tangibility to the web. And that's what we did. We created these experiments at the Science Museum whereby, effectively, it was called Web Lab, you can go into a space, and you can interact with one of 5 different experiments that I'll show you in a sec. But by the same token, it was one of the world's first open exhibitions, which allowed people to log on from the internet. All that yellow cabling is everybody coming in from outside on the web and interact in real time with the people in the physical space. So you're kind of beginning to bridge the gap and really sort of examine the relationship between the on and offline worlds in real time. And we had some really interesting exhibitions and experiments. We had these robots that draw your portrait in the sand. We had these musical instruments that you could play live with people. We had data tracers and trace routing technology that explored themes around where data lives. And when you call it up through a search and you query it, how far it travels in order to get to you and how quickly it gets to you. Because again, we never think about these things, that something might travel 5,000 miles to get to you in a millisecond. You never think about this. So we wanted to kind of pull back the curtain a bit. These teleporters that took you to places that you would never, ever physically be able to get to. They were out of bounds or off limits, but we used technology to get you into these places through a series of 360-degree live streaming cameras. So this is the launch film for this initiative.
Since its launch in 2008, the Chrome browser has evolved and continues to push the potential of what you can do on the web. This means that it's no longer just a simple window to information. Today, the advanced features in Chrome allow us to do so much more, like play with people across the world, communicate with friends far away, and connect us to all sorts of physical devices. We wanted to let people know about these features so that we could inspire new users onto Chrome. What if we take these everyday invisible technologies and make them tangible? In collaboration with the London Science Museum, who are committed to educating people about the science that shapes our lives, we did just that, allowing people to get their hands on these features, and in doing so, learn how the web works, whilst experiencing the power of Chrome. Together, we created WebLab, a first-of-its-kind global exhibition featuring 5 interactive physical experiments made accessible to the world online, allowing anyone, anywhere in the world to access WebLab through a browser. The first of the 5 Chrome experiments is Universal Orchestra, where visitors make live music with people from across the world and experience how the web enables real-time collaboration. In Teleporter, visitors are instantly transported thousands of miles away through a series of 360-degree live streams, from an underwater shark tank in South Africa to a miniature airport in Germany. In Sketchbots, visitors can have their portrait drawn in the sand by a robot, demonstrating how the web translates information. In Data Tracer, visitors watch the epic journey that images take across the web by tracing routes through the Internet's vast network of servers to show where information lives. On entering the lab, both online and museum visitors receive a uniquely generated lab tag, a visual representation of themselves within WebLab, and a place to save everything they create. Lab Tag Explorer allows visitors to see how information on the web is organized by exploring WebLab's global community and browsing visitors' creations, including their own. In July 2012, we launched WebLab in beta, a world first for a physical exhibition. Thanks to the users' feedback, we improved the experiments and made WebLab better. During the 3-month testing phase, WebLab was experienced by 2.5 million online visitors from over 200 countries and 150,000 museum visitors, resulting in over 1 million user-generated creations, from Sketchbot portraits to collaborative music tracks. WebLab continues 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until summer 2013. Open to the world online, live from the Science Museum, London.
So that was WebLab. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was, I say to my guys when we sit down and we try to come up with these ideas, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff out there. You walk by and there's a lot of stuff. You turn stuff on, there's a lot of stuff out there. So when we make stuff, it's got to be better, and it's got to contribute back to society in a positive way, and it's got to matter, yeah? Otherwise, we're just putting pollution out there, and it's got to be good, this stuff, and people have to get something out of it. And it's difficult. It's really difficult, without trying to be too worthy or anything. So we try to do really good things for people. So this whole notion of having a belief and having a mission and getting alignment, and getting people behind it, and getting them to galvanize and make things that matter. So this last thing, again, is another youth-based initiative. I really want to talk about these programs that we can create for young people, because I think, again, young people today are having a tough time. Some of the countries that I work a lot with across EMEA, Spain and Greece, 60% youth unemployment, bleak future. So anything we can do to try to help these people. So this last thing is about trying to create a platform, again, to encourage sort of the next wave of inventors. And what's really interesting about this is, so we run this program called Google Science Fair. And I was lucky enough to be part of it last year as well. And what was interesting is, again, I learned really quickly, if you use creativity and use technology, you tell a story, and then you combine it with tech, and it's almost like your story has superpowers. And you create these environments for people to put their ideas forward. And last year we created the program, and one of the many winners was a 17-year-old girl in Florida. And what she did is she used sort of neural networks, and she used sort of the way that cloud computing kind of works, but she used it in a very different way. She used it as a way to detect early-stage breast cancer, and it worked. And that was what she put forward, and she won. She was one of the winners. And she's 17, and she's from Florida. And you're like, holy shit, like I did this thing that allowed somebody else to do something really, really big and significant. And that, I think that's pretty cool if we can do these sorts of things. So this is a program called Science Fair, and this year, the theme around it was very much based on the people we're talking to. So we're trying to talk to the 13 to 18-year-olds. And so we've had this whole idea about, you know what, you guys, and we didn't want to be patronizing, but we said, you know, you young people, you 13 to 18-year-olds, you're not too young. You know, you're never too young to change the world. Don't lose that sort of audacious sort of vision and all that sort of stuff that lets you think that you're invincible and lets you do these things. Don't ever lose that. And it was weird, so we started doing a bit of research, and we're like, holy shit, like, this is like coincidental. Like, these people, these Edisons, these light bulb inventors, these phone inventors, these people who were creating alphabets for blind people, they were actually like really, really young. They were as young as you are. They're as young as the people that were trying to engage in the program. And the more we dug and the more research we did, and again, we're trying to do things, and this is where, you know, I talk about creativity in technology. We're trying to do things in a very different way. We don't want it to look science-y. We want it to look like American Apparel sort of underwear packaging, you know? So it's like very different from like, you know, lab coats and that sort of stuff. So we did more research, and then we're like, man, like Einstein to Darwin, like, you know, all these people were like the age of the people. And we're like, this is awesome. So how do you get people to really buy into this? And then we thought, well, maybe it's less about you're never too young, and it's more, hey, you know, you dudes, it's your turn. Step forward, it's your turn. These people did it back then. Now your number's up. Come up and do this thing. So it's your turn to change the world. So this is the site, and I'm going to show you a video that we did to launch this platform. And again, you go there, you put your idea forward, you apply scientific methodology to do everything to bring this thing to life, and then you put it forward, and you see if you can get funding for it. And it's pretty cool. So let technology drive your creativity, make things better, make things matter, and make them, you know, try to make them better than they were before. Thank you very much.